The sky was dark after the storm. Heavy clouds still moved slowly above the farmland. Rainwater dripped from the roof of the old barn. Daniel, a simple farmer, walked across the muddy ground. His boots were heavy with dirt, but his mind was calm. He had worked long hours in the fields. The storm had destroyed part of his fence, and he was tired. But then he heard something strange. From the barn came a soft thumping sound. It was not the usual sound of animals or the wind. It was different, almost like something was struggling. Daniel stopped, his heart beating faster. He listened carefully. The sound was real. A low cry came next, so soft that only silence allowed him to hear. He picked up his lantern and walked toward the barn. The door creaked as he pushed it open. Inside the barn was dark and cold. Stacks of hay were damp, tools hung on the wall. But in one corner lay a sack. The sack moved, as if something was inside it. Daniel felt fear rise in his chest. He thought maybe it was an injured animal caught by hunters. He stepped closer, holding the lantern higher. The sack shook again, and a whisper came out. "Please," the voice said, broken and weak. Daniel froze, his hand trembling. That was no animal, it was a voice. A woman's voice, but not like any woman he had ever heard before. He knelt down, pulled at the knot, and opened the sack. The lantern light fell on a face he could never forget. Her skin was pale and almost glowing. Her eyes were large, silver like moonlight. Her hair was thin and shimmered faintly. She looked weak, frightened, and in pain. "Please, don't send me back," she whispered again. Her words were clear but soft, filled with fear. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He had never seen anything like her. Not in books, not in stories, not even in his dreams. This was no ordinary woman. This was something else, something from beyond the sky. An alien, yet her eyes looked so human, filled with tears. Daniel stepped back, unsure of what to do. Every story he had ever heard about strange beings flashed in his mind. Some said they were dangerous, others said they were lost souls. But this woman, this creature, looked more like a victim than a monster. Her hands were thin, her body trembling from cold and hunger. Daniel felt pity rising stronger than fear. He took off his coat and covered her shoulders. She flinched at first, but then looked at him with wide eyes. Eyes that begged for mercy. "Who are you?" Daniel asked softly. The woman shook her head, unable to speak more. Her voice was broken, and her body too weak. She tried to sit up, but her legs gave way. Daniel caught her before she could fall. Her skin was cold to the touch, like the chill of water from a deep well. He helped her sit against the barn wall. The lantern light danced across her strange yet delicate features. She was beautiful, but in an unearthly way. Daniel's mind raced. If anyone in the village found her, they would call the authorities. They would take her away, lock her up, or worse. The way she had begged told him that back meant danger. Whoever had trapped her in that sack might still be near. Daniel looked out the barn door. The fields were silent. Only the wind moved through the wet grass. But he felt it in his bones. Someone might come searching. He turned back to her. "You are safe here," he whispered, though his heart was unsure. The alien woman looked at him, her lips trembling. A tear slid down her cheek, glowing faintly in the lantern light. Daniel could not believe it. He was just a farmer, an ordinary man. And yet fate had placed something extraordinary in his barn, something that could change his life forever. The woman closed her eyes for a moment. She whispered again, "Don't send me back." The words were heavy, filled with sorrow and fear. Daniel nodded slowly, though he did not know what he had promised. He only knew one thing. He could not hand her over. Not tonight, not ever. The storm outside was ending. But inside the barn, a new storm had just begun. Daniel stood there in silence. The lantern flickered, the barn smelled of wet hay. And in that moment, a farmer and an alien shared one secret, one that could not be spoken to anyone else. The night felt longer than any night before, and as Daniel listened to her soft breathing, he knew his life would never be the same again. The night passed slowly. Daniel barely slept. Every sound outside the farmhouse made him sit up in bed. The image of the strange woman in the barn stayed in his mind. Her glowing eyes, her weak voice, the fear in her words, all of it was real. By morning, Daniel knew he had made a choice. He could not tell anyone about her. Not the sheriff, not the neighbors, not even his closest friend. She was his secret now, and he would protect her. At dawn, Daniel carried food and water back to the barn. The woman was awake, sitting against the wooden wall. Her skin still pale, but her eyes brighter in the sunlight that came through the cracks. When she saw him, she flinched for a moment, but then relaxed. Daniel placed the bread and water in front of her. She looked at the food as if it were a gift from heaven. Her thin hands trembled as she touched it. Slowly, carefully, she ate, as if each bite was her first in many days. "You need a name," Daniel whispered. She looked at him, her silver eyes calm but curious. "My name," she said slowly, her voice still soft, "Elira." The sound was strange yet beautiful. Daniel nodded, repeating it, "Elira." She smiled faintly, a small fragile smile that touched his heart. For the first time since he found her, she looked less like a stranger and more like a person. As the days passed, Daniel kept her hidden in the cellar under his farmhouse. He cleared out old tools and placed a blanket on the floor. It was cold and dark, but it was safer than the barn. No villager ever came there. He brought her food at night, water from the well, and sometimes fresh clothes. Each time, Elira whispered her thanks, her voice carrying both gratitude and sorrow. She began to speak more. Her words were broken, but Daniel could understand. She told him that she had escaped from people who wanted to take her back to her world. They saw her as nothing more than property. Her life, there was chains and fear. Here, on earth, she hoped to be free. Daniel listened, his heart heavy. He could not imagine such a cruel fate. Yet the pain in her voice told him it was true. One evening, while Daniel fixed the fence outside, a neighbor walked over. It was old Mr. Harris, who lived across the field. He leaned on his cane and squinted. "Strange lights last night," Harris said. "Up in the sky over the hills. Did you see them?" Daniel forced a calm smile. "Probably the storm, nothing more," he replied. But inside, his chest tightened. Lights in the sky meant only one thing. Whoever was looking for Elira might still be close. That night, Daniel warned her. "They may be searching," he said. Elira's face grew pale, her eyes filled with fear. "Please," she whispered, "don't let them find me." Daniel placed his hand over hers. "You are safe here," he promised, though doubt whispered in his mind. Days turned into a week. Daniel noticed changes in her. Her strength slowly returned. Her voice grew steady. Sometimes she hummed soft melodies that filled the cellar like music from another world. He did not understand the words, but the sound was calming. He also noticed her beauty more clearly now. Not the beauty of a human woman, but something beyond. Her presence felt both fragile and powerful, and yet she carried herself with a sadness that never left. The village, however, was not silent. Whispers spread about unusual things, footprints in the fields, shadows moving at night. The sheriff visited Daniel one afternoon, asking if he had seen anything strange. Daniel shook his head, his face calm, his voice steady. But his heart pounded until the sheriff finally left. He returned to the cellar that night and told Elira what happened. Her hands trembled, and her eyes glistened with tears. "They will not stop," she said softly. "They always come back." Daniel felt anger rising in him. Why should this woman live in fear, hunted like an animal? She deserved peace, not chains. He did not know what kind of beings were after her, but he knew one thing. He would not give her up, no matter the cost. One night, as Daniel walked back from the barn, he saw a shadow on the road. A figure standing near the edge of the village, watching. The man wore a long coat, his face hidden in the dark. For a moment, Daniel thought it was nothing, just a traveler. But then the figure turned, and Daniel felt a chill. There was something unnatural about the way he moved, as if he did not belong here. The figure disappeared into the night, leaving Daniel uneasy. He returned to the cellar, his voice low but urgent. "Elira, someone new is here in the village." Her face went white, her lips shaking as she whispered, "The hunter." The cellar was silent. Only the sound of water dripping from the old stone walls filled the space. Daniel sat across from Elira, the lantern between them. Her silver eyes reflected the light, wide with fear. "The hunter," she whispered again, her voice barely holding steady. Daniel leaned closer, his chest tight. "What do you mean, hunter?" he asked. Her trembling hands clenched the blanket around her shoulders. "They send hunters to find those who escape," she said slowly. Her words were broken, but Daniel understood. "They track across worlds. They never stop until we are caught." Her eyes lowered, shimmering with sorrow. "I am not the first," Others tried to run. None returned. Daniel felt a cold wave run through him. This stranger in the village was not just a man. He was something far more dangerous. Elira's story unfolded in pieces. Her people lived under strict rule. Women were treated as possessions, bartered, and controlled. Those who disobeyed were punished or erased. She had risked everything to flee, hiding in a cargo ship that brought her here. She thought Earth would give her freedom. But the hunters followed, relentless as shadows. Daniel listened, his fists tightening. He could see the pain in her every word. She was no monster, no danger to mankind. She was only a woman who wanted to live free. And yet, the hunter outside was already searching. The thought of losing her filled Daniel with dread. But fear was not his only feeling. There was something else, something deeper growing inside him. That night, Daniel could not rest. He kept watch near the farmhouse window. The village looked calm, but he felt eyes on him. The hunter's presence was like a storm before rain, unseen but heavy. When morning came, Daniel tried to work as usual. He repaired the fence, fed the animals, greeted neighbors. But he moved with caution. He knew someone was watching, waiting for a mistake. Inside the cellar, Elira grew stronger. She could walk now, though still weak. She began to speak more of her world, the stars she once saw, the cruel halls where her kind were trapped. Daniel found himself drawn to her voice. Each word made her seem less alien and more human. He wanted to protect her not only out of duty, but out of care. Elira noticed the way he listened. Sometimes she smiled, a fragile light in the darkness. But whispers spread through the village. Children spoke of lights in the sky. Hunters claimed to see shadows near the woods at night. The sheriff questioned farmers again. Daniel answered with steady lies. Yet every question pressed harder on his chest. How long could he keep her secret? How long before someone came knocking at his cellar door? One evening, Daniel saw the hunter again. This time near the well, speaking to villagers. The man wore his disguise well. His voice was calm, his smile polite. But his eyes were cold, sharp like a blade. He asked too many questions about storms, about strangers, about odd sightings. Villagers shook their heads, but suspicion spread. Daniel felt the hunter's gaze rest on him for a moment. It was brief, but it was enough to chill his blood. That night, Daniel told Elira. Her hands shook as she whispered, "He knows." Daniel tried to calm her, though his own fear grew. "You are safe here," he said firmly. "I will not let him take you." Elira's eyes filled with tears. "No one can fight them," she said. "Humans cannot win against hunters." Daniel looked at her, his voice steady. "Then he hasn't met me yet." The bond between them deepened in that moment. For the first time, Elira reached out and held his hand. Her touch was cold but gentle. Her eyes searched his, filled with both fear and hope. "You risk your life for me," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "Some things are worth the risk." The night air outside grew heavy. The sound of owls echoed in the trees. Daniel stepped outside to check the fields. And there, at the edge of the woods, he saw a faint glow. Not lantern light, not fire, but something otherworldly. Symbols flickered in the air, fading like smoke. Daniel froze, knowing this was not of Earth. The hunter was close, marking the land, searching for her trail. He rushed back to the cellar. "Elira, they are tracking you," he said quickly. Her face drained of color, her voice trembling. "They are using sky marks. They will not stop until they find me." Daniel's mind raced. He knew hiding would not work forever. Soon, the hunter would come to his door. And when that day came, he had to choose. Give her up, or fight for her with everything he had. The cellar fell silent again. Elira's silver eyes locked on Daniel's. And in that silence, a single truth grew stronger. Their fates were now tied together. Neither could turn back. Neither could run forever. The village grew restless. People whispered of strange signs in the night. Animals refused to go near the woods. Dogs barked at empty spaces. Cows refused to leave their barns. Daniel knew it was the hunter. Every mark on the land, every rumor of lights, was part of his search. The stranger was no ordinary man. He wore human clothes, spoke with human words. But his eyes gave him away. They were sharp, too sharp, like steel that could cut without touch. One evening, Daniel returned from the fields and found the sheriff waiting. "Have you noticed anything unusual?" the sheriff asked. "People say there's a man asking questions. Says he's looking for lost property." Daniel forced a calm smile. I've seen nothing unusual, he replied. But inside, his heart was pounding. Lost property, Daniel thought bitterly. The hunter did not see Alira as a person. He saw her as an object to claim. That night, Daniel went down into the cellar. Alira sat with her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes full of worry. He is close, she whispered. I can feel it. Daniel knelt beside her. You must trust me, he said firmly. I will not let him take you. Alira shook her head. You don't understand. Hunters never leave without what they came for. Her voice cracked. If he fails, others will come. Daniel clenched his fists. He had always lived a quiet life. A farmer who tended his land and minded his own business. But now fate had placed a choice in his hands. Hide forever or stand and fight. His gaze met hers, and for a moment the cellar felt smaller. The air heavy with fear and unspoken words. The next morning, Daniel walked to the village square. The hunter was there, speaking with townsfolk. He introduced himself as Mr. Varen, a traveler searching for someone. His voice was smooth, but his questions were sharp. Had anyone seen unusual tracks, strange lights, or strangers hiding in barns? Most villagers laughed nervously, but Daniel saw suspicion growing in their eyes. One man muttered about Daniel working late at night. Another said his lantern was often seen near the fields after storms. Daniel forced himself to stay calm. He greeted the hunter with a nod, pretending not to care. But the moment their eyes met, Daniel felt the truth. This was no man. This was a predator in disguise. That night, Daniel locked every door. He placed tools near his bed, an axe, a shovel, even a hunting rifle he had not used in years. He listened for sounds outside. The night was quiet at first, too quiet. Then came the crunch of footsteps in the dirt. Slow, steady, approaching the farmhouse. Daniel's blood ran cold. He stepped to the window, lantern dim. And there he saw him, the hunter standing near the barn, his face hidden in shadow. Daniel rushed to the cellar. Alira, he's here, he whispered urgently. Her eyes widened, her body trembling. No, she whispered. Not yet, not now. But it was true. The hunter had found them. The air outside grew heavy, almost charged. Daniel could feel it in his chest like thunder before a storm. Alira clutched his arm. If he sees me, he will call others, she said. Daniel looked at her, his jaw tight. Then we keep you hidden, no matter what. The footsteps stopped. Silence spread across the farmhouse. Daniel held his breath, listening. Then came a knock at the door, slow, deliberate, echoing through the wooden walls. Daniel stepped up, heart hammering. When he opened the door, the hunter stood there, tall, calm, with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Good evening, the hunter said politely. I am searching for something that does not belong here. Have you seen anything unusual? Daniel forced a steady voice. Nothing unusual on my farm, he said. The hunter tilted his head, as if studying Daniel's every word, every breath. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the wind moved through the trees. Finally, the hunter smiled again, though his eyes glowed faintly in the dark. Strange things have a way of hiding, he said, but they cannot hide forever. With that, he turned and walked away into the night. Daniel closed the door, his hands shaking. He knew this was not over. The hunter was not fooled. He was waiting, watching, circling like a wolf before the kill. Down in the cellar, Alira's voice trembled. He will not stop, she said. He will come again. Daniel sat beside her, his jaw tight. Then we will be ready, he whispered. But even as he spoke, he wondered how a farmer and a frightened woman could stand against a being that hunted across worlds. The silence stretched, heavy with dread. Outside, the night carried no stars, only darkness. And somewhere within it, the hunter smiled. The hunter's visit left the farmhouse heavy with silence. Daniel barely slept. He sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, staring at the lantern flame. His hands were rough from farm work, but tonight they trembled with fear. He knew the hunter would return, and next time, he would not come with polite questions. Next time, he would come to take Alira. In the cellar, Alira sat quietly, her eyes following every sound from above. She knew the hunter's methods. He would wait, watch, and strike when they least expected. Daniel, she whispered when he came down. You must let me go. I will run far from here. But Daniel shook his head, his voice firm. You won't survive out there alone. The woods are wide, but the hunter will find you. He placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. We moved together, not apart. The next day, Daniel worked in the fields, but his mind was elsewhere. He remembered the old forest path behind the hills. It led to abandoned tunnels once used for mining. Few villagers went there anymore. If he could get Alira there, she might have a chance to stay hidden. But even that plan carried risk. The hunter's eyes seemed to see more than human sight. Every step outside could be a trail. Alira watched Daniel prepare. She noticed how he moved with determination, gathering food, packing water in old flasks, and tying rope. She touched the small bundle of clothes he brought her. Her silver eyes softened. "No one has ever risked so much for me," she whispered. Daniel gave her a small smile. "No one ever had to before." That night, the village was restless again. Children cried from nightmares. Dogs barked into the dark. Daniel stood by the window, watching the road. And there he saw it, a faint glow near the barn. Not fire, not lantern light, but strange marks burning into the ground. Symbols that shifted and vanished like smoke. Alira gasped when he told her. "It is his trap," she whispered. "He is marking the land to lead me out." Daniel clenched his fists. "He won't get you," he said, but his chest ached with the weight of his words. For deep down, he knew the hunter was tightening the circle. Every night closer, every sign sharper. Soon, he would strike. The next evening, Daniel tested his escape path. He walked into the woods, the moonlight barely touching the trees. The air was thick with mist, branches clawed at his coat. But he pushed on, marking the trail with small cuts in the bark. At last, he reached the old tunnels, their entrances covered in vines. The ground smelled of damp earth. It was dark, silent, forgotten. "Here," Daniel whispered to himself. "Here she can hide." But as he turned to leave, he felt it, a presence. A shadow moved between the trees, silent, watching. Daniel froze, his breath caught. He gripped the small knife in his pocket, but the shadow vanished. Only the rustle of leaves remained. Yet Daniel knew. The hunter was already close. The woods were no longer safe. He returned quickly to the farmhouse. Alira looked up with wide eyes. "You saw him, didn't you?" she asked. Daniel nodded slowly. "He's watching, waiting for us to move." Her voice broke. "Then it is hopeless." Daniel knelt beside her. "No, not hopeless. It only means we must be smarter." For the first time, Alira reached into the folds of her clothing. She pulled out a small shard of crystal, glowing faintly with blue light. Daniel stared at it in awe. "What is that?" he whispered. Alira held it close, her hands trembling. "A piece of my world," she said. "It can hide us for a short time, shield us from the hunter's marks." Her voice dropped lower. "But it is weak, it will not last long." Daniel studied the glow. Even the smallest hope felt like fire in the dark. That night, they prepared to leave. Daniel packed the food and rope. Alira clutched the crystal close. But outside, the hunter was already moving. His shadow crossed the road, his footsteps silent. He was circling the farmhouse, waiting for them to step into his trap. The barn creaked as if something heavy pressed against it. The animals grew restless, kicking at their stalls. Daniel held his breath. The hunter was closer than ever. "Alira," Daniel whispered, "we leave tomorrow at dawn." Her silver eyes locked on his, filled with both fear and trust. "Tomorrow," she whispered back. But neither of them knew if the morning would come before the hunter made his move. Dawn broke with a pale light. Mist rolled across the fields, covering the farmhouse like a thin blanket. Daniel stood by the window, his pack ready, his rifle leaning against the wall. He had chosen this moment, before the village fully woke, before the hunter struck openly. But his gut told him danger was already near. Every sound outside seemed heavier, every shadow stretched longer. In the cellar, Alira clutched the glowing shard close to her chest. Its blue light pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. She looked at Daniel with worry. "The crystal will hide us only for a short time," she whispered. "If he comes, it cannot protect us both." Daniel knelt down, meeting her eyes. "Then let it protect you," he said firmly. "I'll do the rest." They stepped out into the cold morning. The sky was gray, the fields wet with dew. Daniel led her toward the forest path, his heart pounding with each step. Every sound behind them felt like footsteps, every branch cracked like a warning. At the edge of the trees, the air shifted. Daniel froze, his grip tightening on the rifle. A figure emerged from the mist, tall and calm. The hunter. He no longer bothered with his disguise. His coat shimmered, fading into armor that glowed faintly. His eyes burned with silver fire, sharp and inhuman. "You cannot hide her," the hunter said, his voice smooth yet cold. "She is not yours. She belongs to us." Alira stepped back, trembling, her breath quick. Daniel moved in front of her, his voice steady. "She belongs to no one." The hunter tilted his head, almost amused. "You are only a farmer. What do you think you can do?" Daniel lifted the rifle, the wood rough against his shoulder. "Enough," he said, "to stop you from taking her." The hunter's smile faded. The air around him shimmered, symbols glowing like fireflies. Power rolled off him like heat from a forge. Daniel fired. The shot echoed through the trees. The bullet struck the hunter's chest, but sparks flared and the round shattered. The hunter barely flinched. "You think your tools can harm me?" he asked, stepping forward. Daniel fired again, the shot useless. The hunter raised his hand, and the rifle flew from Daniel's grip, landing in the mud. Alira cried out, clutching the crystal tighter. Blue light spread from it, wrapping her in a faint shield. The hunter's eyes narrowed. "Old relics will not save you." Daniel charged forward, swinging the axe he had strapped to his back. The blade cut through the air, but the hunter caught it with one hand. Metal screeched against his armored palm. With a twist, the axe snapped in two. Daniel staggered back, breath ragged. Yet he did not fall. He picked up the broken handle and swung again, this time striking the hunter's face, leaving a faint mark. For the first time, the hunter's calm broke. "You dare," the hunter hissed, his voice sharp. Energy crackled around him, shaking the trees. Daniel's chest burned with fear, but he stood firm. Behind him, Alira's shield glowed brighter. She raised her hands, silver sparks dancing in the air. Her voice rose, speaking words Daniel did not understand. The ground trembled, the symbols in the dirt broke apart. The hunter turned, his eyes flashing. "You are too weak to fight me." But Alira's voice grew stronger. Her glow pushed against the hunter's energy. For a moment, the air was filled with light and shadow clashing. Daniel grabbed a fallen branch and struck the hunter's legs. The blow was nothing compared to Alira's power, but it broke his focus. The shield around her flared, burning brighter. The hunter staggered back, his armor flickering. Daniel saw his chance. With a roar, he tackled the hunter, driving him into the mud. The ground shook from the impact. The hunter rose quickly, his strength overwhelming. He struck Daniel across the chest, sending him sprawling. Blood filled Daniel's mouth, his vision blurred. But he forced himself up again. He could not stop, not while Alira still stood behind him. The hunter stepped forward, raising his hand for the final strike. But Alira shouted, her voice echoing like thunder. A burst of silver light exploded from the crystal. It struck the hunter square in the chest. His armor cracked, the glow in his eyes flickered. The hunter staggered, his face twisted with rage. "This is not over," he hissed. With a final flash, his body dissolved into smoke, vanishing into the mist. The forest fell silent again, the air heavy with the echo of the fight. Daniel collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. Alira rushed to him, tears shining in her silver eyes. "You fought for me," she whispered, her voice trembling. Daniel gave a weak smile. "And I'll keep fighting," he said. But as he looked around, at the broken ground and fading marks, he knew the truth. The hunter was gone, but not defeated. And worse, more would come. The forest was quiet after the battle. Mist drifted through the trees, carrying the scent of damp earth and smoke. Daniel leaned against a broken log, his body aching from bruises and cuts. His breath came heavy, but his eyes stayed sharp. Alira knelt beside him, the shard of crystal still glowing faintly in her hands. Her silver eyes glistened with tears. "You risked everything for me," she whispered, her voice shaking. Daniel gave a tired smile. "Some things are worth it," he said, his voice rough but steady. They waited in silence, listening for signs of the hunter's return. But the woods gave only the call of birds and the rustle of leaves. The hunter had been driven away, but not destroyed. Daniel knew it was only a matter of time before another came. The fight had not ended the danger, it had only delayed it. Yet for now, they had survived, and survival meant another chance. By the time they returned to the farmhouse, the sun had risen higher. The fields glowed with morning light, but the air carried tension. Daniel looked at the land he had tended all his life. The barn still stood, the animals stirred restlessly. But he knew this place was no longer safe. If the hunter returned, the farmhouse would be the first place searched. He turned to Alira, his expression firm. "We can't stay here," he said. She nodded slowly, though sadness touched her eyes. "This was your home," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "Home is not the walls, it's the people inside them." That evening, Daniel packed what little they could carry. Food, water, tools, and a few clothes. Alira wrapped the shard carefully in cloth, holding it close as if it were part of her soul. Before leaving, Daniel stood one last time at the farmhouse door. He remembered the quiet nights, the sound of storms, the life of a farmer with simple worries. That life was gone, replaced by something greater. He closed the door behind him, not knowing if he would ever return. They walked together into the forest. The path was long, the trees whispering in the wind. Daniel guided her toward the abandoned tunnels he had found. It was not perfect, but it would give them cover. As they walked, Alira spoke softly. "My people do not know kindness like yours," she said. "On my world, strength means cruelty, and mercy is weakness." Her eyes met his, glowing in the dim light. "You gave me something I never thought I would have, choice." Daniel felt warmth in her words. He had never been a hero, never sought glory. But in her presence, he found purpose. "You're not just my burden," he said quietly. "You're my family now." Alira stopped, her breath catching. Her lips trembled, and for the first time, her tears were not of fear, but of hope. "No one has ever said that to me," she whispered. Daniel took her hand gently, his rough fingers curling around her delicate ones. "Then hear it again," he said. "You're my family." The tunnels were dark and cold, but together they made it safe. Daniel lit a fire, the glow filling the stone walls. Alira sat close, watching the flames dance. The world outside was full of danger, but here, for a moment, there was peace. Daniel leaned back against the stone, exhaustion pulling at him. But before he closed his eyes, he saw Alira smiling faintly, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. For the first time since he found her, she looked truly safe. Days passed, and the bond between them grew. Alira's strength returned, her laughter soft but bright. Daniel taught her small things, how to plant seeds, how to mend cloth. She taught him songs of her world, soft melodies that filled the dark tunnels with light. They were different, but together they fit. Not farmer and alien, not protector and burden, but two souls who had found each other against all odds. One night, as the fire burned low, Alira spoke again. "The hunters will come back," she said softly. Daniel nodded, his eyes steady. "Then we'll face them, together." She looked at him with quiet wonder. Her voice a whisper, yet strong. "You are more than human to me, Daniel. You are hope." Outside, the night stretched wide, the stars watching from above. Somewhere in the darkness, hunters still moved, searching. But for now, in the forgotten tunnels of Earth, a new family had begun. A farmer and an alien, bound not by chains, but by choice. Their fight was not over, but their hearts were no longer alone. And that, Daniel knew, was a victory greater than any battle.